Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Veronica. Thank you so much for clicking the link to watch my video. Without further ado, let's get started with today's video. Hey guys, so sorry there hasn't been a video for this past couple of weeks. Basically, I took a week off because I was super busy and I didn't have time. And then when I was editing some videos that I had already pre-filmed for the second week, I did not like the quality of those videos, so I decided to trash them. So thus, 2 weeks without me. I'm very, very sorry. It's almost why I always have so many videos pre-film. I pre-film a lot during the weekends, just because I know that happens, but I hadn't built up my stash yet, so it's kind of like, So I'm sorry about that, but I'm back. So if you don't know who I am, my name is Veronica, and in this video, I'm going to be answering all your questions that you've asked me about the Air Force. Currently, I am in the Air Force. I am an officer. I am a medical service corps officer. And yeah, I've been in for almost 2.5 months. So it'll be 2.5 months, I believe in February. Yes, February. I had to think in my head like, So, you guys have asked me a ton of questions about the military, so I'm going to try and pick just about, I'm not going to say the number because when I say a number, then I get myself in trouble. But I'm not going to answer every single person's question, but I'm just going to answer some questions that I think people have already asked. So before I get started, I want to go ahead and answer just a little bit about me because it seems like I get these questions a lot. And I don't know if you guys are watching my videos, I understand. But yeah, I've already answered these questions, so this will probably be the last video where I answer these questions. First of all, I am a medical service corps officer. I already mentioned that. I commissioned in August 1st of 2016, so my date of rank is August 1st. And you'll understand that once you kind of commission and join, or if you're already joined, you kind of understand that. Second thing is, I got my degree in healthcare administration from Wichita State University. I actually have a video where I graduated college on this, on my channel, because I've been I've been doing YouTube for quite some time. I just was very inconsistent. So this past year and a half, I would say I've been very, very consistent. So that's why my channel has been growing. Second of all, I am a direct commission. I did not do ROTC. I did not do anything that has to do with the military until I actually joined the military. I am a military brat, which means both of my parents, or at least one parent, in my case both, were in the military. My parents were in the United States Air Force, so I grew up Air Force, so I know Air Force. So that's why I commissioned, just because my dad was like, you should commission. I was telling my dad, no way. And then I was like, you know, I kind of want to do it. So I did it. It took me a year and a half to get through from start to finish with applying to be an MSC, doing all of my interviews, having a board, being selected, all that jazz. So, it does take a little bit, and sometimes people commission really, really fast. It really varies. My scroll was messed up twice. So when you commission as an officer, every single officer gets a scroll. I need to figure out how to get a copy of mine because former President Barack Obama signed my scroll, which is pretty cool. So I need to find out how to get mine. So I encourage you guys when you commission to try and request your scrolls because the current president at the time signs them, so it's pretty cool. But anyways, so that's why mine took a little bit longer, just because the scroll thing, my recruiter wasn't very good, and there's just a lot of tea, a lot of drama. So maybe I'll do a fill-in on that, on my commissioning experience a little bit later. But essentially, you guys can go back through all my videos and see kind of where I started to now. So all of those questions or statements that I just said, I'm not going to keep answering those because I get those questions a lot, and it's not frustrating, but it kind of is at the same time to keep answering that. So yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and get into your questions. Some of these are new, some of these are old. I screenshotted a lot of stuff that I thought were good questions, and some people just recently asked me questions. I was like, oh, I've never answered that. That's good. So if I'm answering your question, yes, you're welcome. Or thank you for asking, and then yes, you're welcome. Okay, so one of the first questions I'm going to ask is, this person asked, 2 questions. The first question they asked was, how is scheduling for you and other healthcare jobs like nurses? Do you get to pick the scheduling? So for me, scheduling, I'm a medical service corps officer, so I do a lot of healthcare admin, which means I do a lot of administration. So I don't necessarily work any type of shift work. Depending on where you're actually stationed, depends on what your hours are going to be. So I know a lot of friends who were nurses and they had to go to training in San Antonio or training in Florida before they went to their base, and they had to do shift work just because they never really had any type of nursing skills on the outside, so they sent them to training first. It's different for every person. So for instance, if you come in and you've been a nurse for already 2 or 3 years, they're probably not going to send you to training. You're probably going to go straight to your unit, your base. Some bases are actual full-blown hospitals. I think there's like 2 left in the entire United States Air Force. Most of them are ambulatory clinics. So basically it's like treating the common stuff, very much like an urgent care center, and not like a real hospital. So if you're working at a place where it's a full medical center or hospital, or there's specialties or there's surgeries, you're more than likely going to be working shift work. If you are at a clinic like me, which is majority of everyone, you are going to be working just normal hours. In the military, hate to burst your bubble, they can call on you 24 hours a day. Most of the time, they're not going to call on you 24 hours a day. Most of the time, you're going to be working about 8 to 12 hours. I say 12 hours as an extreme. So at a clinic, if you're working 12 hours, you're very busy. You have a huge patient caseload, or if you're an MSE, you're just trying to get programs done. There are times where I worked about 10 to 11 hours, but I never went to 12. Well, actually, I take that back. I did work 12-hour shifts a lot when I was first a flight commander, but it's not because they told me I had to work 12-hour shifts. I knew I had to work harder and longer hours because I wanted to be good at my job, and there was just so much going on that I had to. So there's not a specific schedule. Like, most clinics are open from 7 to 16:30, which is 4:30 in military time, but you are most of the time working past that time. So it just depends on what your job is and where you're stationed. So where you're stationed will determine kind of what your mission flow is, and then what your job will also determine how many hours you work. So that question is kind of like, So for those of you who are like, oh my gosh, I'm thinking about joining the military, can I work 8 to 5 or 8 to 4:30 and get off at exactly 4:30? The answer is no. So that's just for all of those of you who are wondering about like hours in the military. You're always working because it's like you're on salary. So, and even worse, they can call on you 24/7. So, okay. So next question that this person asked was, since you're an officer, who are you in charge of? Like, are you head of a unit? Okay, so this is another kind of gray area question. So I am an officer. I am an MSC officer, so I'm a flight commander right away. So I was in charge of about 10 to 12 people. Overall, though, including all the contractors and the staff, I was over about 22 individuals. But a lot of my nurse friends and people who are more on the clinical side, like social workers and all that stuff, you're either in charge of like one person because you're their direct supervisor, or you don't really have anyone to be in charge of. This is because MSCs are put in charge kind of right away. You lead a flight. So a flight is equivalent of like, I don't know how to explain it. A flight is basically like, imagine you have 10 people in your section. That's considered a flight. A flight can be as small as 2 and as big as like, you name it. So that flight, if you're the flight commander, you're basically their leader. There are some instances where you supervise maybe one person, but you're not the flight commander. In that case, you're just a supervisor. A lot of responsibility is given to, particularly in the healthcare, MSCs right away, as opposed to actual medical clinician licensed folks. This is because, and this is just Veronica's opinion, I believe that the Air Force wants them to focus on their actual job that they got hired to do. As they go higher up, which means once you hit captain, major, you'll start to see them become flight commanders and leaders, whereas MSCs are flight commanders and flight leaders from butter bar days, which is a second lieutenant. If you're nervous about being in charge of people, don't be. There's a lot of trial and error that comes with it, and you grow, and being a good follower as well as a good leader, you'll be fine. So it's just trial and error, so just hook on to some good mentors and you will be fine. So that question's kind of a gray area, so yes and no. For me, I was in charge of people who worked in my section. For other people, they're in charge of just one person. So it's definitely less work when you have 1 to 2 people you supervise instead of a whole flight. That comes a whole nother territory. So this person asked me a question, and I'm gonna kind of read it. So this is kind of like a scenario question. This person said they enlisted with a 4-year due to the fact that they don't have requirements to be an officer, like a bachelor's degree or science degree, in a bunch of different categories like engineering and stuff like that. What would be their rank and how much will they get paid? So I get this question a lot. I get the question basically like, if I enlist instead of doing officer, what would be my rank and how will I get paid? I am not a enlisted expert. I do have I have a lot of good enlisted friends who are just really strong mentors personally for me. And I think they told me, I believe they said the highest you can come in is a senior airman. So even though you will have your degree or whatever, you'll come in as a senior airman and then you can test for staff sergeant and then basically go up from there. But I don't know if it happens, I'm sure it does. Someone correct me if I'm wrong in the comments down below, but I have not seen someone coming in off the streets, even with a degree, ranking as a staff sergeant. So basically they're gonna have airman in their name somewhere, so that can be airman basic, an airman, an A1C, airman first class, and I'm not going in order, you guys. I'm just saying all the airman names and then senior airman. So you're gonna have airman in your name. You can Google 2019 or 2018 defensive, the military pay chart. I cannot think of the official title, sorry. You can Google it. Everything of what we make is public knowledge. So if you are married with kids, look at the dependents side for pay. If you're single, look at the single side, like no dependents for pay, and that will determine that. But I can't tell you what rank you're going to come in because it depends on 2 factors, your education and your experience level, and sometimes your recruiter. So those 3 things on if you have a good recruiter, what's your experience level in the field that you're going into, and your degree will determine what your rank will be. But I cannot guarantee you a rank or pay structure without knowing those things, and plus I'm not qualified to know those things. So you need to talk to a recruiter. So if you have any questions over enlisted, you can try and search for other YouTubers, but I definitely do not know anything really enlisted when it comes to that type of stuff. Also, they said, could I join and go back to receive a master's in the degree that's in the requirements? So you can definitely join enlisted or officer and get your master's while you're in. They have something called tuition assistance, which basically the Air Force says, hey, you've completed a year, I believe, of the Air Force. We're gonna pay tuition if you want to go to school. So right now I could sign up and start TAs and basically pay either nothing or as little as like $120 a semester for my master's degree, depending on what the degree is and where you sign up to go. So if you're enlisted or officer, it does not mean your learning stops once you get in. You can always further your education as long as it's giving back to the Air Force. There are some degrees that they probably won't pay for, like something in probably fine arts. I mean, usually it's something like business, something like that where they can get use out of you if you stayed in. And it's not to say that other degrees you can't, but the Air Force is all about like needs of the Air Force, and just like any of the other sister services, I mean, you can't just like go in and say I want a master's in dance and I want the Air Force to pay for it. I mean, if they don't have that available in their degrees to pay for, then you can't get it paid for. So just be wise about that. Okay, so this one's a really long scenario. I'm not going to read everything that they said. This person basically says, I have 2 bachelor's degrees in biology and a BSN, which is great. Once I complete college, I want to pursue nursing like a full RN, which is also great. Since I still have a good amount of time left, I just wanted to email you, seek out advice on processing, preparing for OTS/COT. So in your case, it would be COT if you're going the RN route. So he mentioned a good point. A lot of people ask, when is it a good time to reach out to a recruiter? It's always a great time to reach out to a recruiter at any time. When you are doing COT or OTS or anything officer-wise, speaking from experience, I don't know if this was just my recruiter, they really don't want to talk to you until it's your last 2 years of school. The last 2 years of school, I'm saying this is because you can set yourself up where as soon as you graduate, you can go ahead and commission and go straight off to COT, OTS, TFOT, or BOT, which basically all of those are officer training schools, so don't fret. Or you can reach out to them your senior year of college and you can do the same exact thing. It just, the earlier, to me, I recommend always reaching out earlier the better. My recruiter was like, basically she wouldn't give me an application or let me apply until I was almost graduated, just because when you're direct commissioning, they don't care about if you haven't finished your degree, you're not going to be able to apply. Whereas if you're enlisted and you're crossing over to commission, you can actually submit your MSc application before you get your full-fledged degree. Continuing the question that this person said, they basically said, what would you recommend during the application process for preparing for going to OTS? So basically, from preparing to go to OTS, I recommend you Googling and watching either my videos, someone's videos about what you need to do to kind of prepare as far as your mindset and packing list. A good thing is you need to start working out, start getting in shape for the Air Force, because it's always good. You have to pass your PT test or you can't come in, period. So that's not a good idea to start off with a failure, because you'll more than likely not be allowed in. Another good thing that I feel is good to prepare for is reading some leadership books and books on how to work in a type of structure where it's high demand, fast paced, you're leading individuals, and to kind of get yourself mentally prepared. I also recommend going and if taking a tour on base, or maybe if you can call on base and say, hey, I'm thinking about commissioning, I just want to see what your work day is like. If you have access to the base. If you don't have access to the base, you'll need someone to sign you on, so that won't really work. But if you're not used to that military structure, I highly stress that you go and shadow someone if you're able to get access on base. I will try to make some videos to kind of prepare you guys as far as military structure, to kind of break it down for you guys, so that way if you really don't understand, and let's say you're commissioning and you don't have family, friends, parents, or anyone in the military, and you're brand spanking new, to kind of help you guys before you go. But a lot of this stuff is just, it's like the hurry up and wait. You're preparing and you're trying to do all this stuff, but no matter how much you prepare, you are never really prepared for the Air Force, because there's things that they don't teach you that you may go through. There's things that they don't show you, because hey, you can't show people every single thing. But most of all, I think as long as you're just continuing to work on yourself, work on your leadership skills, work on your followership skills, being physically fit, maybe getting your uniforms ready if you've fully commissioned and been accepted. Those type of things are things that I would say that you can work on while you're waiting. But if you haven't even applied yet, I would just highly stress reading leadership books, searching on YouTube, like I said, and just overall focusing on your physical fitness. Okay, this person is asking me about MEPS because they just watched my MEPS video, and they said, are candidates barefoot during their medical examination, and how detailed do they examine their feet? So I'm guessing they're concerned, this person is potentially concerned about their feet. You are definitely barefoot during the medical exam, and I'm pretty sure they look at every inch of your body. And when I say every inch, they're like all up close and personal in your lady business, business and your mail business and all of that. So there's nothing you can hide, and that's the whole point of having a MEPS examination, is there's nothing you can hide. If you are concerned about a medical condition, you need to let your recruiter know and make sure you guys are honest, because that can end you up in, you know, filing false paperwork or lying, and you just don't want to go there with a government agency, and they take it very, very seriously. So if you're concerned about something, talk to your recruiter, talk to your doctor, and go from there. So this person asks, do you have to go to MEPS twice? One before you do your interview and one after you've already been accepted? No, you go to MEPS once you've fully been offered a position, and once you pass MEPS, that's it. So you don't go to MEPS twice, you only go once, because it costs the Air Force dollars. So, or not the Air Force, every single sister service dollars. So they're not going to try and pay for you twice. The only time you would have to go to MEPS twice is if they sent you home because you couldn't get off your nail polish, or you failed to show up on time. Then you'll go home and you'll potentially get a new date. So that's the only time, but you won't go through MEPS twice, just once. Have you ever heard, this person asks, have you ever heard of anyone getting into the MSc program with a BA in business? Yes, I have. I have a bachelor's degree myself. Although it's not in business, my healthcare administration degree was heavily focused in business classes and science classes. So I know people who have definitely got their degree in business. I'm not sure if they've had a minor or special concentration in like finance, because I know that's important as well. So when you talk to your recruiter, tell them what your degree is in, and they should have a list of qualifying degrees. This person asks, is there a different mess dress for enlisted and officers? Yes. Mess dress is pretty much required for officers. You will wear your mess dress quite a bit, especially if you're a flight commander or a supervisor over a lower ranking airman, because then you'll have lots of banquets and graduations to go to, and then just going to the gala and like annual awards. So I've worn my mess dress quite a bit. Definitely expensive. Buying all the military uniforms are definitely so expensive, but yeah, you definitely will need to get your mess dress. So if you want to look up the difference between mess dress for enlisted and officer, you can look up AFI, which is Air Force Instructions. So type literally AFI 36-2903, and that is our dress and appearance instruction, and it will tell you everything from tattoos to how you look, to grooming, to makeup, to what's not allowed, how you look. So if you guys have any questions, you need to look up that AFI. You just Google it and it should be the first one that pops up. Someone asked, if you're enlisted and graduate OTC, I think they meant COT or OTS, do you have any say in where your first assignment is? This is a great question, because I'm sure a lot of you are like, dang, how'd you end up in Montana? Sorry, my MacBook is like so big. If you graduate COT or OTS, you do know where your first assignment is generally right before you go. Mine was like, I found out my assignment literally like 2 days before I got my orders. Or before I left for COT. No, I found out my assignment like 2 weeks before. So, I mean, it was still very, very short. Normally you find out your assignment pretty early on, but it varies on recruiter and all that drama. And I say drama because sometimes it's pure drama. But essentially, I filled out what used to be called a dream sheet, and your dream sheet is like where are the top, I think 6 to 8 places where you want to go, 2 overseas, and then the rest are CONUS, which are basically in the States. So I got Montana because an officer who was supposed to be in my position decided they didn't want to join, or something happened where they were no longer going to be commissioned, and so I was one of the newest sessions, and they're like, this is where you're going to go. I did not pick Montana. I did not have Montana on my list. I did not want to go to Montana. Being here has taught me that basically you don't get to pick a lot of you don't get to sometimes pick where you want to go, so no, you don't always get to pick your first assignment. If you're lucky, maybe you'll get something that's on your dream list. But if you're like me and you fall into the needs of the Air Force category and you're going to take what they have open and here you go, then you'll understand that sometimes you don't get to pick your assignments. However, it works out, you know, and that's part of the Air Force and the military. I don't know how any of the other services do it, but that's part of the Air Force is sometimes you don't get the assignment you want and what happens when that happens. And so I'll film maybe an advice video on that and kind of how you get through it. But overall, what I want to say about that is, because I feel like I'm getting off topic, is most of the time you do get at least one of the bases you put down. Before I end this video, I wanted to answer one last question, and I just got this question today, and I want to include it in this video because I think it's very important and it'll lead me into my next few comments. So this person said, "Hi, thank you so much. So did you know that there was officer positions available when you were looking into going OTS? My recruiters are telling me there aren't any positions available right now besides lawyers, pilots, and chaplains. So I don't know if I want to wait and see what happens or look into another branch. I was hoping for the Air Force officer, and I've heard a lot of people find it difficult to move to officer once enlisted. I find myself to be like you in leadership aspects, sorority president and cheer captain. So I would love to move into a leadership role as opposed to a worker bee." Hey girl, your question made it to my Q&A video. Thank you so much. This is a great question. So right now, basically, it is hard to get in as an MSC. Sometimes when you go to join any sister service, but I'm always going to focus on the Air Force. Sometimes when you go to join the Air Force, there are enough people where it is like we're 100% manned. What that means is, let's say we're authorized 50 officers and we have 50 assigned officers. Sometimes we'll go over depending on the budget, you know, what Congress gives us with the NDAA and all that other stuff. And then sometimes we can't go over manning. Right now, probably what your recruiter's saying is really true because we're good on manning right now for MSCs. And for right now, you know, it can open up in 6 months and all of a sudden they're like, oh, we need 5 more MSCs, and then boom, you're in. Or it'll be a year and a half before they're like, okay, we're going to take in about 15. I was grateful and lucky to get in at a time where they were fine, you know, having a great attrition rate of just MSCs every time they did a board. I think they did 2 boards a year, so there would be about 10 to 12 people. But at this time, they are right. They're slowing that down for reasons that I don't know, but I'm sure it has to do with the budget. But yes, I've heard of that. I've heard that in my channels. I've heard that now you saying it. So I'm not discouraging people that you can't apply for MSCs, but I've seen it before where it happens a lot with the enlisted structure more than officer structure. But if you ask enlisted members, they're like, yeah, I couldn't get into that career field because they're full, so I'm just waiting for an opening. So you ask basically, should you wait or should you just try and enlist? Because I'm guessing you're not interested in being a pilot, which the Air Force will always take pilots. Chaplains are kind of short too, just because they don't promote as quickly as the other officers do. So yeah. And then lawyers, JAG, they'll always take lawyers because there's people always in trouble. My advice to you is, which is what I always say, is don't settle. I mean, I looked into the Army and I realized I did not want to be a platoon leader. I did not want to be deployed 100 times a year. Like, I wanted to keep that work-life balance. I wanted a service that respected women, that was more appreciative of women, and I'm not saying that other services aren't, but I feel like the Air Force is definitely more where I would tell women to go. Not saying that the Army isn't, or the Navy isn't, or the Marines aren't, or the Coast Guard isn't, and all of that. I'm just saying from my experience, the Air Force, for me, in my opinion, is the best for women. I always tell people not to settle. However, I don't know your situation, so if you really feel like, I just want to serve, I don't care how I get in, then I would say be open to going enlisted. But you said you're like me and you like leadership positions, then don't settle. I would say wait a year and see where it goes from there. Anything past that, you're just gonna have to make a life decision. the best thing, and I'm definitely a story of it, especially how I got in, is all about timing and God's timing, but timing in general is everything. So timing in general, because you don't know who you're competing against on the board. So even if you got a chance to apply, you could be competing against people who have it like they're just bomb.com on paper, and maybe you're an alternate and maybe you don't get in right away. Or you could, you know, get in right away and maybe you don't like it and then you get out and after your 3-year service commitment. So for me, my advice to you would be to wait and see where it's going, stay in contact with the recruiter, and make sure they let you know as soon as possible that there's an opening. And I'm so thankful that the first recruiter that I had was a male before he PCS'd and got a different job, and he was bomb.com, and he was just awesome. After that, my overall recommendation is that you definitely wait. I would say a year, 6 months to a year, and then make your final decision then. And you can definitely contact me to keep me in the loop if you want. I always like to help people out. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this Q&A video. I feel like I answered a ton of questions. I still have more questions to answer as always. I'll try and do Q&A videos when I get an influx of questions. So whenever you guys have questions, I do like to film them just because I do get a lot of the same questions, and it's easier just to talk about it like we're talking as like peers, as opposed to like me writing it, because sometimes I don't articulate every single thing in writing because I'm just so tired of looking at computers that I'm like, okay, over it. But yeah, so if you guys have any more questions for me, go ahead and leave them down below, because I like to have them in one place. So you can ask me questions in 2 places. You can either A, leave a comment down below, or B, DM me on Instagram, and those are how I will answer your questions. So I need to have them in controlled places, otherwise I'm looking at 4 different areas and I'm not doing that anymore. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I can't wait to see you guys in the next video, and thank you guys so much for being subscribers. Shout out to the new subscribers. Thank you for joining my channel. I was gonna say my family. I don't have a family channel yet. And big news, big exciting news is Lewis and I might be creating a couples channel, even though I was like, I want to wait because that's a lot of work, but we've been talking about it. So if you guys want to join our couples channel, I'll let you guys know when it's up. But give this video a big thumbs up for if you love the Air Force, if you love my videos, you want to see more from me, and you want to support our couples channel. That's coming soon to a channel near you. And we're on our way to hit 5,000 subscribers, and I'm excited. I can't wait to do it because it's gonna be so exciting, and I have my small little family. So yeah, anyways, I'm tired of talking, so I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye.